All right, we're going to be working on page 181. So our first one is we have two mixed numbers, 8 and 5/6 plus 1 and 1/7. And there's a couple ways to approach this. We have two mixed numbers, so we could ignore the two whole numbers, or we can convert to improper fractions and then add and subtract, or add, sorry. As a class, we've been talking about how it's just easier for us to remember to convert to improper fractions so that we are consistent and do it every time. So we've been talking about how it's a whole number multiplied by the denominator plus the numerator. 8 times 6 is 48, plus 5 is 53. And then we have 1 times 7, because whole number times denominator, plus numerator. Okay, now we have two unlike denominators. So now we need to find an equivalent fraction for these by finding a common denominator. So I'm going to count by 6s and count by 7s. You know your math facts, sometimes this is really helpful because you'll find the fact before without having to do any of this. And it's going to be 42. Now I'm out of room and I don't want to cram, so I want to make sure I do the rest on graph paper. My common denominator is going to be 42. And if you're working in class, you need to make sure you keep your graph paper, so when I check your work, I can see that you showed your work and not just copy the video. So I have to think about how this fraction, the 6 is going to become 42, 6 times 7. Now this is where it gets tricky because we converted everything. We do have a bigger number to multiply. So 53 times 7, 371. So 53 over 6 is equivalent to 371 over 52. Now my next fraction is 87. I'm sorry, 8 over 7 times something gives me 42. I know 6 times 7 is 42. What I do to the denominator, I also do to the numerator. Now I'm going to take these two numbers and add them up. Now this one I probably should have left it those whole numbers and just added them, but for consistency it makes sense to just do it the way we've been doing it in class. So I have 371 plus 48. So I have 419 over 42. Now that's super improper, so I can divide. (42) can't go into 4, it can't go into 41. I want to make sure I always leave room up here so that I don't mess up my place value. So I have to think about 42 times 10. Well, that's 420, so it's probably 42 times 9. 371. 78, oh my gosh, sorry guys. Don't forget to do your regrouping when you subtract. I don't know why I regrouped there, I didn't need to. I'm just working ahead all the time. Oh my gosh, sorry. So 41 is our remainder, so it'll be 9 and 41 40-seconds. The normal temperature of a human body is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Marcus has a fever of 101.8 degrees Fahrenheit. How much higher is his body temperature than normal? Well, how much higher tells me this is subtraction. So an estimate, well, his temperature is probably close to 102 and 98. So then if I were to subtract that, I would get about 4 degrees Fahrenheit. About, right, because it's an estimate. So now let's line up our place values when we write this, line up our decimal, and then subtract. Bring down the decimal, So 3 2/10 degrees higher than normal. And it's important to be precise, because if I were to estimate to my doctor and say about 4 degrees, well, 3 2/10 isn't quite 4 degrees. And that matters. Irma is making 2 types of bows to sell at her craft fair. She wants to make a sample of each type to show her teacher. She needs 3/4 yards of ribbon for one type and 3/6 yards of ribbon for another. How much ribbon does she need in all? Well, this is an addition problem. 3/4 plus 3/8. I can't just add right away. I need to find a common denominator. So 4, 8, 12, and then 8. My common denominator is 8, which I love because I only have to change 3/4. 3/4 times something gives me a denominator of 8. 4 times 2 is 8. What we do to the denominator, we do to the numerator. So 6/8. So now I'm going to substitute. Where I had 3/4, I'm going to write 6/8. 3/8 remains the same. Then I have 9/8. 9/8 is improper. I'm going to quickly divide. 8 goes into 9 one time. Always report my remainder as a fraction. So numerator becomes my remainder becomes my numerator. My denominator stays the same. So she needs 1 1/8 yards of ribbon. Write a number story to represent this story. Write a number model to represent the story, then solve. Alex earns $8 per hour when he babysits. How much will he earn in 3/4 of an hour? Well, he has 8 times 3/4. That'll tell us how much he earns there. So 8 over 1 times 3/4. Now I multiply straight across. 8 times 3 is 24. 4 times 1 is 4. Now I'm going to divide that. But because I know my math facts, I know it's just $6. So he will earn $6. Number 5, please make sure that you explain your strategy you use to subtract. Now you have to think about that. I can't tell you how you used it, because a lot of times you're using the video to just check your work, so it might be different than how I solved.